So you know that feeling, right? When you finally get to lay down after a long day, but the second your head hits the pillow, it's like your brain decides it's time to start replaying every embarrassing thing you've ever done. Like that awkward thing you said back in high school, or like that time you tripped and spilled your coffee all over yourself at work, those moments. And then on top of that, your brain's like, oh, and don't forget about everything you need to get done tomorrow. So you're laying there trying to relax, but instead you're mentally making to-do lists and reliving cringy moments. And it's like, no wonder falling asleep sometimes feels impossible. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced that kind of pre-sleep mental chaos. But what if I told you that something as simple as a bedtime story could actually help you quiet that mental racket and drift off to sleep peacefully? I know it might sound a little strange, like something you'd do for kids, not for yourself.
But stick with me, because there's actually some pretty fascinating science behind why sleep stories can be so effective for adults too. And to help us understand the ins and outs of why this works, I've got a very special guest joining us today. Anastasia is the mindfulness expert behind the super popular YouTube channel, Anastasia's Whisper, where she creates all sorts of amazing calming content, perfect for relaxation and will better sleep. So Anastasia, welcome to the deep dive. I'm so excited to chat with you today, and I'm really curious, based on your experience creating all that calming content for Anastasia's Whisper, why do you think sleep stories work so well for adults who are struggling to turn off their brains at night?
That's a great question, and it's something I've been so fascinated by as I've explored this whole world of sleep and relaxation on my channel. I've seen firsthand how powerful these stories can be, and when you really think about it, it all comes down to how our attention works. You see, when we're caught up in those loops of worries or to-do lists, it's like our brains are stuck in overdrive, right? It's like that constant mental chatter just keeps going and going. But a sleep story offers something different, a gentle narrative that's not demanding your full attention. It's not like a puzzle you need to solve or a thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's more like a soft current that you can just let your attention drift along. And this shift in focus is really key because it can actually help activate our parasympathetic nervous system. And that's the system that's responsible for slowing things down, calming our bodies, getting us ready for rest. So it's like by engaging with a story that's not stressful or stimulating, we're sending a signal to our bodies that, hey, it's okay to relax. It's time to start winding down for sleep.
That makes so much sense. So it's not just about distracting ourselves from our thoughts, it's actually about actively shifting our bodies into a more relaxed state. I know that the podcast that inspired this deep dive sleep stories for adults, it mentions some research supporting this idea, like actual scientific studies showing that listening to these stories can have tangible benefits for our sleep. Can you tell us a bit more about that research? What kind of evidence is out there?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely some compelling research that backs this up. The podcast you mentioned highlighted a really interesting study from Harvard Medical School, and what they found was that people who listened to calming audio, like stories or guided meditations, actually had lower levels of cortisol. And cortisol, that's that stress hormone that tends to keep us feeling alert and on edge. So lower cortisol, especially at night, is a really good thing for sleep because it means our bodies are better able to relax and prepare for rest. Then there was another study mentioned in the podcast. This one was from the Sleep Science Journal back in 2020, and they specifically looked at the impact of storytelling before bed. And what they found was really fascinating. The people who listened to stories, they not only fell asleep faster, but they also slept for longer periods of time. So it seems like there's something about that narrative element that goes beyond just general relaxation techniques. It's not just about listening to calming music or white noise. There's something about that storyline that seems to be particularly effective for improving sleep.
That is so interesting. And, it makes me think about all the times I've tried to read a book before bed to relax, but then ended up staying up way later than I planned because I got so caught up in the story. Clearly, there's a difference between those kinds of engaging stories and the sleep stories we're talking about. And the podcast also touched on some neurological stuff too, like what is actually happening in our brains when we listen to these sleep stories. Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, that's where things get really fascinating.
Yeah.
There's been some amazing research from neuroscientists at Oxford University, and what they've discovered is that listening to gentle narratives, particularly when they're spoken in a calming voice, it can actually help to quiet down that overactive brain activity we often experience when we're trying to fall asleep. You know that feeling when your mind is racing with a million thoughts? It's like our brains are stuck in this high gear, and these stories, they seem to act as a sort of natural off switch. They help to slow down those rapid fire thoughts and create a more peaceful mental state.
It's like you're giving your brain a bedtime story to help it wind down. It's so cool to think about the science behind it all. And it makes me realize that there's a real art to crafting an effective sleep story. It's not just about picking any random story and reading it in a monotone voice. There are specific elements that make these stories so effective. And I'd love to hear from you based on your experience creating these stories on Anastasia's Whisper. What are some of those key ingredients?
You're absolutely right. It's not just any story that will do. There are definitely some essential elements that make a sleep story truly effective. And one of the most important things is that slow, soothing rhythm. You want the story to unfold at a gentle pace with no sudden surprises or jarring changes. Think of it like a calming lullaby or the gentle rocking of a boat. It's that predictability that helps to lull our minds into a relaxed state.
And what about the content of the story itself? Does that matter too? Like what kinds of themes or settings work best?
Absolutely. The setting is super important. You want to create a sense of peace and tranquility. So, calm, descriptive environments tend to work really well. Imagine things like a quiet forest with the sounds of birds singing, or a cozy cabin with a crackling fire, or maybe a starry night sky with a gentle breeze. Those kinds of settings can evoke a feeling of relaxation and help listeners create their own peaceful mental images without being overly stimulated.
So definitely no action-packed car chases or edge-of-your-seat thrillers.
Exactly. Those kinds of stories would probably have the opposite effect. We want to avoid anything that's going to get the adrenaline pumping or keep people on the edge of their seats. The goal is to create a sense of calm and ease.
And then there's the voice itself, I imagine. That plays a huge role too, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The narrator's voice is incredibly important. It needs to be soothing, gentle, and reassuring. You want a voice that makes you feel safe and relaxed, like you're being tucked in for the night. A deep, calm voice often works well. But the most important thing is that overall tone of warmth and gentleness. You don't want anything harsh or abrupt in the narration. It should be like a soft caress for the ears.
Yeah, I'm guessing the ending of the story is important too, like how it all wraps up.
Yes, absolutely. The ending needs to be peaceful and resolved, no cliffhangers or unresolved plot lines. You want the story to gently fade out, creating a sense of completion that mirrors the process of falling asleep. It should be like slowly drifting off into a dream.
So basically the opposite of those shows I binge watch late at night that leave me wanting to stay up all night to see what happens next.
Exactly. Sleep stories are all about gently releasing our attention, not gripping it tightly. They're designed to help us let go of the day's worries and stresses and ease into a restful night.
This has been so insightful, Anastasia. I'm already feeling more relaxed just thinking about it. And I know our listeners are probably eager to experience the magic of sleep stories for themselves. So where can they go to find some of these wonderfully soothing narratives?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. On my YouTube channel, Anastasia's Whisper, I regularly upload new sleep stories that are specifically designed to help adults relax, unwind, and drift off to sleep. And we just recently added a brand new story that I think your listeners will find incredibly calming.
Perfect. So if you're tired of those nightly mental battles, take Anastasia's advice, head over to Anastasia's Whisper. On YouTube, find a story that speaks to you and let the soothing sounds guide you to a night of peaceful rest. You can find the link to Anastasia's channel in the show notes, and while you're there, be sure to check out all her amazing content. There's something for everyone, whether you're looking to reduce stress, improve your sleep, or simply find a few moments of peace in your day.
The link is www.youtube.com/Anastasia-Soul-Whisper.
Awesome. So as you settle into bed tonight, instead of letting your mind race with thoughts, try something different. Imagine a calming voice painting a peaceful scene, a story that gently carries you away from the stresses of the day and towards a night of deep, restful sleep. Sweet dreams, everyone.